Steel Requiem, a father's redemption forged in the ring, where scrap becomes soul, a son awakens legacy, and a machine teaches the meaning of heart. In a world where boxing is metal, the real fight is for connection, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond between man, machine, and the boy who believed. In a near-future world, the art and sport of boxing had been entirely transformed. The arena spotlight once reserved for human fighters now belonged to towering metal gladiators. These robotic boxers thundered under neon lights, their hydraulic frames pounding the canvas. They were engineered for brutality, controlled remotely by handlers who sought glory and money. The glory once found in human perseverance now lay in steel, gears, and faulty wiring. Amid the pyrotechnics and betting frenzy, the essence of true struggle had become mechanical. Charlie Kenton existed in this world not as a hero, but as a weathered survivor. Once a promising boxer, he had traded gloves for gears, slinging battered machines in underground circuits. His glory days were behind him, replaced by a string of losses, debts, and reckless bets. He had lost more than just matches. He had lost purpose, pride, and connection. His only link to something real is that his son, Max, had slipped away years ago, left in the care of Max's mother. Max had grown into a sharp, determined boy, quiet but resolute, shaped by absence and loss. His mother's death returned him to Charlie's orbit, an unannounced catalyst that reshaped his father's fractured existence. Max's aunt and her husband offered Charlie a deal. They would pay a lump sum in exchange for temporary custody while they traveled abroad. Charlie, stunned by necessity and unsure how to protect a life he had caused to drift, agreed. The result was a reluctant bond forged in chaos. When Charlie drove Max away from the life he had known, it was not just a journey across miles, but a voyage through estrangement. Max accepted his new world with a silent precision. He watched Charlie assemble machines from detritus, built for destruction and survival. The older man relied on grit and instinct, the younger on observation and hope. They embarked on a roadside tour of underground fights, chasing entry fees and bruised cash prizes in ramshackle rings lit only by the heat of expectancy. Charlie's main robot, Ambush, was supposed to be his ticket, but Ambush had grown weak, its joints worn, its spirit dimmed. In one pivotal fight, set in a dusty Texas arena surrounded by makeshift fences and unwritten rules, the machine faced off against a mechanical bull rigged for blood. The fight was chaotic and dangerous, ending in chaos as the bull smashed Ambush into scrap. Charlie scrambled for credibility and cash, and Max watched the collapse of a world he'd only just glimpsed. Now they stood in the wasteland of machine dealers and back-alley mechanics seeking something to reignite their fortunes. That's when Max discovered the buried treasure of this half-dead industrial age, Adam. Half submerged in mud and neglect in a junkyard, Adam was no sleek fighter. He was a trainer robot, a sparring partner abandoned and overlooked. Where Charlie saw scrap, Max saw potential. Each panel, each scratch, each dent became the skeleton of a dream. Charlie acknowledged the boy's resolve but held back. The world of professional robot boxing had advanced beyond Adam's outdated sensors and weight class. Still, Max insisted. Together they rolled Adam out of the dirt, dusting away disuse, his once unused shadow feature waiting to be awakened. The restoration process forged a new foundation in their relationship. Charlie, forced by circumstance, began to apply muscle memory from years in the ring. He applied grease to pistons, replaced worn servos, rewrote wiring codes, and purified sensor matrices. He calibrated hydraulics, realigning the bot's center of gravity. There was care in the restoration. It was meticulous, sweaty, and invested. Max contributed to matching Charlie's improvisation with youthful ingenuity. They scavenged parts from spare machines, jury-rigged connectors, tried aftermarket mods, and repurposed code snippets. Their interdependence required trust, and trust was new to Charlie. Their first tests weren't in official arenas, but in makeshift pits and backwater rigs. Charlie monitored shadow responses as Adam followed his motions, jab, duck, weave. Charlie's shadow imprint enabled the robot to mimic human moves in real time. Max watched, excited at what mattered most. Adam could feel rhythm, smarts, and even heart. When they entered informal bouts, Adam surprised them both. The rusted machine from the junkyard, once obsolete, won matches. It moved with uncanny footwork, responsive and lean. One early win arrived in a dusty shack arena where local gangs placed bets. The victory was a small handful of bills and respect. But for Charlie and Max, it suggested a new fingerhold on destiny. They were more than drifters. They were a team. Max gleamed with pride. Charlie, noticing the boy's first real smile in years, felt something stir within him, something he hadn't known he missed. Soon, the matches grew. A pit outside Denver where the crowd roared as Adam dodged heavy strikes, an abandoned warehouse where sparks flew as arms tore into heavy armor. Each victory whipped Charlie's adrenaline and gnawed at temptation. Each win brought bigger bets, higher stakes, and darker crowds. There was money now, but it carried rust and threat. Charlie was again walking a razor's edge, one wrong decision away from disaster. But the narrative arc wasn't just about scrap metal triumphs. Adam's rise in these underground rings brought interest. Whispered rumors reached circuits of greater legitimacy. A scout noticed Adam's peculiar fluidity. Its shadow technique moved like a ghost boxer channeling Charlie's instincts. Discussions floated of entering the WRB proper, the World Robot Boxing League. It was a dream forged in dust and welding sparks, and danger. Charlie knew the risk. Upgrading Adam to official regulations meant professional-grade hardware, a reinforced endoskeleton, diagnostic AI integration, and high-impact actuators. These things cost money he didn't have. He fretted over trust. He worried that once they stepped into the WRB spotlight, Adam could be claimed, commodified, and controlled. But Max wagered everything with belief, hope, and youthful conviction, and Charlie relented. They rigged a mechanic's garage into a workshop. Charlie upgraded Adam's servos to sturdier steel and installed titanium plating. Max did night-scanning code and optimizing shadow response. Between them, they crafted a machine that looked patched and battered but moved with clinical precision. They accepted their first official fight in a sanctioned WRB qualifier. They traveled with Adam to his debut under neon panels amidst cameras and sponsors. Charlie rebalanced the bot's center of mass and tested the shadow interface. Max waited by its side, unwavering. The arena lights went live, and Adam stepped forward. The crowd hushed at first, judging by appearance, but when Adam pivoted, jabbed, and slipped strike after strike in a ballerina's timing, spectators gasped. Adam began to win again. Opponent after opponent fell to that uncanny mirroring. Each round reaffirmed that more than hardware was driving Adam forward: human spirit, legacy, and vulnerability. The underdog performance in that qualifier became the stuff of headlines. Journalists hailed the junkyard phenom. Social feeds lit up overnight, from obscurity to viral sensation in a single fight. The world was paying attention. For Charlie, fame carried its own ironies. He disliked crowds, hated exposure, and feared what came after attention. Max, on the other hand, reveled in the glow. Charlie worried, afraid the spotlight would reveal everything: his debts, his failings, and the volatility of his character. Some promoters kept their distance, others tried to court him. Offers poured in, promising contracts and stability. They whispered of full sponsorship, professional training facilities, and corporate backing. As Adam advanced through the WRB preliminary bracket, the inevitability of a championship fight loomed. At the top of the rankings stood Zeus, a monolith of a machine, unbeaten, backed by global resources and corporate vision. Zeus was the pinnacle, unassailable. The rivalry wrote itself: Adam versus Zeus, the rebel from rubble pitted against the empire in steel. Charlie's anxiety metastasized. He worried for Adam, for Max, and for himself. He had begun to cherish what they had, afraid that ambition would cost everything, force them into a commodified machine cycle, tear them apart, and drag the boy into a world too raw. Max, noticing his father's hesitation, understood that Charlie's fear was rooted in love. He confronted the risk with gems of his own maturity. He wouldn't be owned. He wouldn't carry the shame. He only wanted to fight, to do this with Dad. And so, they prepared. Charlie upgraded hydraulics again. He programmed shadow sequences with precision. Max scouted opponent footage, analyzing tactics and weaknesses. They worked in tandem, Charlie's experience and Max's creativity. They filed paperwork, accepted formal contracts, and signed liability documents. Adam was officially in the game. At each step, Charlie watched Max stand taller. He pulled for the boy's victory and feared for his heartbreak. He confronted his own scars, his father's loss, his own abandonment, and sacrifices he had never fully mourned. Max became his mirror, showing him what he had destroyed in the past and what he still could build. The final match was set: Adam versus Zeus in the Grand WRB Championship. The world watched. Social media narrated with memes and pundits built storylines. The contrast was cinematic. The battered underdog versus the polished juggernaut. The human heart behind the machine demanded attention. Charlie, for the first time in years, felt a clarity he never knew he could again. Purpose. Focus. Belief, if tentative, is restored. But before that culmination, Charlie's past returned. Debt collectors caught up. A shadowy promoter sought to claim Adam's rights. Threats flitted into their path. Max, aware and brave, stood with Charlie rather than waver. The father-son partnership crystallized into more than a compromise. It became love, accountability, and mutual defense. In chest-slamming regret, Charlie positioned himself not just as a trainer or promoter, but as a protector. When the build-up closed in and the eve arrived before the fight, Charlie paced in solitude. He thought of his career, of mistakes and regrets. The smell of boxing gloves and motor grease reminded him of dreams long buried. Max knocked quietly, walked in, and placed a hand on his shoulder, not asking, just showing. The gesture said, "We do this together." He steeled himself for what came next. On fight night, Adam and Zeus stood on the stage of history. Charlie adjusted the controls, and Max supervised last-minute optimizations. Fans filled the air with electricity. They had come expecting a show, but would witness a reckoning. Adam's battered frame and battered soul were ready to soldier on. Zeus, sleek, polished, and unwavering, stood as the course the world expected. Charlie knew this was no longer salvageable. It was transcendence or ruin. Either they built something real tonight, or walked back into dust. The stadium roared like a living beast. Floodlights swept across a sea of spectators. Flashing cameras ignited like static in the night sky. The WRB championship stage was colossal, steel-forged and corporate-polished, a shrine to power and profit. Above it all stood Zeus, the undefeated titan, towering, emotionless, perfection engineered into brutality. His jet-black armor gleamed under the lights, his servos humming with predator precision. And beside him, Adam. Smaller, scrappier, scars etched into his frame, one shoulder still crooked from an old underground hit. But in those eyes, if sensors could be called that, something shimmered. Not defiance, not fear. Something more elemental. Resolve. Charlie stood in the trainer's pit, jaw tight, fingers wrapped around the control pads. He had never felt so small, and yet never so alive. Max stood beside him, his heart hammering, his gaze never leaving the ring. Everything they had built, every night spent soldering joints, every mile they had driven, every loss, every triumph, it had all led to this moment. The bell sounded. Zeus struck first in an explosion of movement. His punch landed like a missile, sending Adam flying back. The smaller bot crashed hard, sparks flying, his frame groaning under the assault. Charlie's heart clenched. Max didn't blink. They knew Zeus hit hard, but they also knew Adam had something Zeus didn't have. Endurance. Grit. The fight unfolded in flashes and collisions, steel against steel. Zeus attacked in controlled, algorithmic bursts, each move pre-programmed for dominance. But Adam adapted. He shifted stance, mimicked Charlie's footwork, and began dancing with surprising grace. The shadow mode activated, and suddenly Adam wasn't just reacting. He was boxing. He was remembering every movement Charlie had ever fed into his core. He became muscle memory forged in metal. Max slammed commands into the controller while Charlie shadowboxed from the pit. He moved like a man reborn, jabbing, ducking, pivoting, and uppercutting. Adam mirrored each move with uncanny synchronicity. The crowd began to notice. The cheers grew louder. A chant rose, "Adam, Adam!" Zeus's team panicked. They had never seen the champion challenged like this. Their machine, for all its power, had never needed to adapt. It had never been forced into instinct. It had only ever dominated. But Adam learned. Round after round, the underdog took a beating and kept moving. Bruised panels, exposed servos, bent knuckles. Still, he rose. By the 6th round, the momentum shifted. Adam landed a clean uppercut, an actual staggering blow. The audience erupted. Zeus stumbled, recalculated, and returned fire. But he was no longer untouchable. Adam danced out of reach, responding to Charlie's ghostly movements like a puppet freed from strings. Max jumped, eyes blazing. Charlie's movements grew tighter, more focused. Every jab he threw, Adam turned into artistry. They weren't controlling a robot anymore. They were fighting. In the corner between rounds, Adam stood silent, frame twitching with damage. Charlie's chest heaved with sweat. Max touched the robot's chest, as if trying to lend him strength through will alone. The camera feeds zoomed in. Around the world, millions watched this battered junkyard machine defy the impossible. The final round began. Zeus charged with fury. His programming went primal, unleashing a torrent of violent combinations. Adam's absorbed most, barely countering. Then came the signal. Charlie stepped forward into full shadow mode. His fists moved with fury and focus, his body remembering the boxer he once was. He moved not just to fight, but to finish. Adam's mirrored every motion. Left hook, weave, uppercut, body shot, shoulder roll, jab, right cross. Zeus stumbled again. The Colossus buckled under the unexpected barrage. Sparks erupted from his chest. One shoulder servo shorted. Still he stood. The crowd screamed for blood. Time slowed. With seconds left, Charlie unleashed a final series of every punch born from years of regret. Every pivot a rewrite of who he once was. Adam delivered the blows like an echo of redemption. And then the bell. Silent. The round ended with Zeus standing but damaged. Adam, barely holding together, stood proud. His lights flickered. He had done what no one else had done. Gone the distance with the unbeatable. The judge's decision arrived. Zeus had won on points, but the crowd didn't cheer him. They rose for Adam. Max looked up at Charlie, no bitterness, only pride. Adam had lost, but they had won. Charlie wrapped his arms around his son, holding him in the center of this thunderous moment. For the first time, Charlie wasn't running. He wasn't hiding from past choices or avoiding tomorrow. He was present. With Max. with everything that mattered. Zeus's team exited the ring quickly, eyes down, shaken. Adam stayed behind, a beacon in the storm. Fans surged toward the rails, chanting his name, holding up signs, and wiping tears. Max climbed into the ring and stood beside Adam, lifting one of the robot's arms high. The underdog had become the people's champion. The robot built to train, forgotten in mud, had become a symbol not of strength, but of resilience. Later, when the lights dimmed and the cameras turned away, Charlie and Max sat in the back of the empty arena. Adams, still standing nearby, whirred quietly as systems powered down. Charlie looked at his son not just as a reflection of his past, but as the architect of his future. Max had brought him back, from shame, from indifference, from the dead. They stood and walked away, shoulder to shoulder, leaving behind the wreckage of what they'd fought through together.